Hello everybody, welcome to another video with me, Matthew Gill, Prophet and First Elder of the Restored Branch of Jesus Christ. Today we're going to be talking about the LDS Temple Endowment, some of the changes that have been made. So let's get to it. Well, hello there. I want to welcome everyone back today. It's been a while since I recorded my last video, and I'm grateful and thankful for all of your prayers. I've had some ill health over the last couple of months, and that stopped me from being able to record as much information as I would like to have recorded. But I appreciate everybody's prayers, and I appreciate all your kind messages, and I'm able today to be able to record this video. As I said, today we're going to be diving into a topic that has sparked significant discussion and controversy within and without the LDS community, and that is the LDS Temple Endowment Ordinance. Specifically, we're going to explore the changes that have occurred over the years and the changes that have taken place over the last couple of days and the reasoning behind them, and what these changes mean for the broader restoration movement. But before we start, we need to understand what the LDS Temple Endowment is and why it is. However, before we dive in, I want to emphasise that this video isn't meant to attack anyone's faith or beliefs. Rather, it's an exploration of the questions and concerns that arise when a church claims to be the one true church and an unchanging church, yet continues to make significant changes to one of its most sacred ordinances. So please understand that this is not an attack. This is not an attack on anyone's beliefs or faith. This is just an expose of the stuff that's going on. So first, let's ask ourselves what the LDS Temple Endowment is. Okay, and to understand the LDS Temple Endowment, we need to step back to the origins of the LDS Church and its founder, Brigham Young. Brigham Young was the head of the travelling 12 apostles. He wasn't anything other than this. He was not a leader in the inner circles of the church by any estimation. And much that had been said about him has come from those who believe he was next in line to succeed Joseph Smith after his death, and those who he had a close relationship with. And all those people were predominantly polygamists. Young stole much of what he had and usurped his power. And many of the members of the early church at a time when confusion ran wild during the succession crisis. Brigham Young was not, by any stretch of the imagination, what he's made out to be. He was not a favourite of Joseph Smith, certainly wasn't a favourite of Emma's, and was never really in line to succeed Joseph Smith. But we've been over that in the succession crisis video, and I don't really want to go over old ground with that. Many people believe that Joseph Smith instituted the first endowment ceremony in 1842 in Norfolk, Illinois, but no proof exists in Joseph's hand that this is the case. We are expected to believe that those who went with Brigham and his followers to Salt Lake, that's what happened, even though Joseph's surviving family all said at the time and kept on saying that it's nonsense. And it is proven to be nonsense because there's nothing in Joseph's hand saying that he instituted any form of endowment in 1842 or anywhere else. So because we have very little to no evidence that Joseph Smith instituted the first LDS endowment, save the testimony of those who went with Brigham to Salt Lake, we have to ask what exactly was being done and by whom. Was it truly an ancient ritual restored, or was it a product, a revelation from God, even though no evidence of a revelation exists? So was it a product of those seeking to control the narrative of the restoration and how it all worked out? Or was it just a reflection of 19th century myth-building, Freemasonry, rather than ancient Christianity, as many believe? We also have to understand that there is no scriptural evidence for one. And we also have to remember that at the first time the LDS Church, organised by Brigham Young in Salt Lake City, carried out what we now know as the Endowment, was in 1877, so a long while after 1844. And it took place in the St. George Temple in Utah. And at St. George, Brigham Young directed a small group of individuals, including the temple president, Wilfred Drudruff of the Quorum of the 12, or LDS Quorum of the 12, to write down the ceremony to ensure its consistency over time and between new temple projects. The St. George Temple was also where the first endowments were performed on behalf of the dead. So prior to this, there was no work done on behalf of the dead in the early church, nor was there any endowment ever done in the early church. I'm talking about the church organised by Joseph Smith, whether that is in Kirtland or whether that is in Nauvoo. Please remember that there wasn't a fully functioning temple in Nauvoo, which is why they say they took place above the red brick store, because they couldn't possibly have taken place within the Nauvoo temple because it wasn't completed or anywhere near completion at that time. So one of the red flags for me is the striking resemblance between the LDS Temple Endowment and Masonic rituals. The parallels are undeniable. The handshakes, the oaths, the aprons, these elements almost directly are lifted from Masonic tradition. So we have to ask ourselves, is the endowment a divine ordinance, or is it a blend of borrowed Masonic rites wrapped in a religious language? That's the question. Then there's the issue of the penalties, or the tokens and signs as they were once known. In the original LDS Temple Endowment, participants made oaths of secrecy under penalty of death, graphic and disturbing gestures that implied violent retribution for revealing temple secrets were on offer. Though these have since been removed, one has to ask, why were they ever included in the first place if they were only going to be removed? And then we have to ask, what kind of restored gospel requires its followers to make death oaths, and what kind of God would institute them to only later say, we don't need them any longer? The implications of the endowment go beyond the ceremony itself. For the rest of the Restoration movement, the endowment represents a significant departure from the teachings of early Christianity, and even from the early doctrines of the restored gospel and early church itself. The ceremony introduces a complex hierarchy and the narrative of spiritual elitism that wasn't present in the simpler, more inclusive teachings of Joseph Smith or the early Restoration gospel and the church. The LDS temples where the endowment is performed are often described as the house of the Lord. But the exclusivity of these buildings, where only members who have passed worthiness interviews are allowed to enter, raises serious questions about the messages it sends out. Is the endowment truly a path to spiritual enlightenment, or is it a tool of control, reinforcing a rigid system of obedience and conformity within a church organisation? The answer to that has to be yes. Furthermore, the endowment's impact on the broader Restoration movement cannot be ignored. Other branches of the movement and various other restorationist groups have largely rejected the LDS endowment. These groups argue that it represents a departure from the original vision of the Restoration, a vision centred on equality, community, and the simple truth of the gospel, not secret rituals and hierarchical power struggles and structures. By examining the endowment critically, we can see it as a point where the LDS Church diverges from the original principles that inspired the Restoration. For many, this divergence has led to disillusionment and even departure from the LDS Church, seeking a more authentic and less ritualistic expression of the Restoration gospel and faith. The LDS Temple Endowment Ceremony is not just a religious rite, it's a symbol of the LDS Church's evolution, or perhaps devolution, depending on which way you look at it. It's a ceremony steeped in secrecy, hierarchy and borrowed rituals, raising serious questions about its origins and purposes, and its impact on the broader restoration movement. The endowment may be seen as sacred to many, but it's also a point of massive contention and divergence from the simple and more exclusive teachings that many believe should be, and are for many organisations, at the heart of the restoration. So now to the changes. What are they and what do they mean? To understand the significance of the changes made to the LDS Temple Endowment, we have already looked at its history. We know the endowment ceremony is central to the LDS faith and its members. We know the endowment is a series of symbolic rituals and covenants that members of the LDS Church participate in within LDS temples. We also know it's considered essential for exaltation, or the highest form of salvation in the LDS Church and its doctrines. So, what about the changes? According to the official LDS teachings, the gospel is unchanging, the same yesterday, today and forever. However, over the years we have seen numerous changes to the temple endowment ceremony. These changes have included the removal of certain elements, the alteration of covenants, and even the introduction of entirely new concepts. It isn't just the same old ceremony shortened or simplified. Many things have been taken away and added to. So let's take a quick look at some key changes that have taken place over the years and that have taken place recently. So the earliest changes happened between 1904 and 1906. These involved minor adjustments and clarifications, largely focused on wording and presentation. In 1990, there was a significant year of change. Several aspects of the endowment ceremony were removed or altered, including elements that many found controversial or uncomfortable, such as the signs and the pences and the tokens and the death gestures. In 2005, another round of changes focused on the presentation of the endowment itself, making it more accessible to members globally. In 2019, so just a couple of years ago, a major revision introduced changes that address concerns about gender roles within the ceremony, amongst other updates. And then we get to 2024. Yet more changes to the LDS Temple Endowment Ceremony. It seems that on Tuesday the 13th of August, not long ago, the LDS Endowment Ceremony changed again. We know this because of multiple reports from those involved in the organisation and those outside of the organisation across the restoration. We have to ask ourselves, what do we know so far about these changes? So we know that the endowment has yet again been shortened by at least half an hour. So now I think now the runtime must be about 60 minutes. To make this possible, they've removed some of the repetitive dialogue and also diminished, according to sources, and also diminished Satan's role within the film that is shown at the temple, which means that Satan will probably not speak directly to the audience, although this has not been confirmed. And if it has been confirmed that this is not the case, I will retract my statement. There are also some possible changes to the covenants that are made, although not to the ones that require you to vocally say yes and nod and bow your head in reverence. What is obvious, and is a fact, is that the endowment has been changed again, although not all the exact details of the changes are yet known, but changes have been made. And that could be a problem for those like Dallin H. Oakes, who continue to say things like this: the gospel of Jesus Christ does not change. Gospel doctrine does not change. Our personal covenants do not change. It's also a problem when Russell M. Nelson, the president of the LDS Church, says to the women, you are making the same covenants that our first parents made, that Lehi and Sarai made, and Moses and his wife made, and Abraham and his wife made. We know that's not true because we've already shown that the temple endowment has changed over the years. So even if this, we argue that the temple endowment was given to these people anciently, which there's no evidence of, but let's just say for argument's sake that they did do a temple endowment back in the old times, in Moses and Abraham's day and the Nephite times. It's not the same endowment anyway, and those promises you make aren't the same. So the words that they're saying about it's the same is just nonsense. There have been major changes, and there's no proof anyway that those ancient prophets did anything like what the LDS Church are doing in their temples. So these changes, while often framed as adaptations to meet the needs of global church, raise an important question, as I've already pointed out. If the church and the gospel is unchanging, why are these ordinances supposedly given by divine revelation from God so frequently altered? If God is the same yesterday, today and forever, and the covenants don't change, why would God, if this endowment is so essential to exaltation for your salvation, why does God keep changing it? That's a question I can't answer for you, but I'd like you to think about it. This brings us to the real heart of the issue. Why does a church that claims its gospel isn't changing and an organisation that is led by God feel the need to change one of its most sacred ordinances? Why? Critics argue that these changes suggest a human element in the creation and adaptation of these ceremonies, which contradicts the idea that they are divinely revealed and immutable. If the endowment is truly of divine origin, and I do not believe that they are, why has it undergone so many revisions? And why do church leaders, LDS church leaders, assert that the gospel never changes when the evidence suggests otherwise? Moreover, what do these changes say about the LDS church claims to be the one and only restored church, bringing back the pure gospel as taught by Christ? These alterations raise questions about the reliability of the restoration. If the temple ordinances central to the LDS theology can be changed so significantly, what does this say about the stability and preeminence of other restored truths? The implications of these changes go far beyond just the LDS Church. They cast a major shadow over the entire restoration movement, which includes various other groups and denominations that trace their origins to Joseph Smith's teachings. If the LDS Church, the largest and most prominent restorationist body, feels a need to change something as fundamental as the endowment, it prompts other restorationist groups to ask, what else might need re-examination or reinterpretation? It's a dangerous line of questioning. It opens a whole can of worms that leads to the re-examination of key cornerstones of our faith, like the first vision, the translation of the plates, and by extension the sacredness of the Book of Mormon. The entire backstory of our faith can and is called into question. These seemingly small matters to LDS members have a massive impact on all of us. Additionally, this raises a theological conundrum. If the endowment ceremony can change, does this mean that other doctrines and practices might also be subject to change? And if so, where does that leave the concept of an unchanging, restored gospel? It is a deeply worrying development. I often thought that once I had left the LDS Church, much of what they did would not affect me or any other restorationist movement. But I'm afraid I was wrong. Because they are the largest and by far the biggest organisation, they have a very large impact on how the world sees the restoration and the restored gospel. And what they do or do not do does impact others greatly, whether we like it or not. I want to make it clear from our end that the restored branch of Jesus Christ does not believe that the LDS Church is the one true church, and we do not believe that the LDS Temple endowment is of God. The reason I'm talking about this today is because of the impact they have on all of us. There is no scriptural evidence what the LDS Church called temple endowment services or ordinances. Nowhere in recorded scripture does it mention anything like this, nor does Joseph Smith, despite the fact that they and others keep bringing him into it when talking about the temple endowment. Much of what we think we know about it comes solely from LDS sources and therefore, in my opinion, cannot be trusted. So in conclusion, what are your thoughts on the temple endowment? Does it enrich or diminish the original message of the Restoration? Are the changes to the LDS temple endowment ceremony bringing up difficult questions about the nature of the divine revelations itself, the concept of an unchanging gospel, and the stability of the Restoration movement as a whole? While some may see these changes as a positive evolution, making the ceremony more inclusive and relevant, others like me view them as evidence of human intervention in what should be a divine and unalterable practice, if it is true, and I do not believe it is. As always, I encourage you to do your own research, think critically, and come to your own conclusions. The purpose of this video isn't to tell you what to think, but to provide a perspective that might help you in your own exploration of faith and truth. Yet again, I want to thank you for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on the LDS endowment and the changes to the LDS temple ceremony. Do you see them as necessary adaptations? Do they raise concerns for you? I'd love to hear your perspectives. You can email me at info@restoredbranch.com. I'd love to hear from you. So, yet again, I want to thank everybody who has watched this video today. I want to thank you for all of your prayers and for your wonderful messages of support while I've been going through what has been a very difficult period in my life with my illness. And I want to thank you for joining me today. So until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and keep searching for the truth. Thank you. Look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.